All right, 3 key matchups for South Carolina and Texas A&M and what it will take to get a win on Saturday. It'll be easier than you think. Locked on Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. It is a fantastic Wednesday afternoon, and we are breaking down Texas A&M and South Carolina. We're about 3 days away from the primetime matchup in Willie B this Saturday night. And we got a good show for you, breaking down the game, talking about the matchups, and a full deep dive per your request for the South Carolina defense as well. But first, I want to say thank you so much for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we are a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. If you are going to the game on Saturday, if you're going to get tickets for anything in the upcoming November, December months, make sure you're using our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? Game time. All right, what time is it? It is time to get into the nitty-gritty and the numbers and all that, the deep dives that I love to do before we talk about the actual game itself. So, like I said, it's a Wednesday episode. We're about 3 days away, and the game is if I feel a little bit uneasy about it, strictly because South Carolina, I feel like is at their best when they're kind of like, laying in the weeds or lying in the weeds. Like when they're not getting a ton of pub and people patting them on the back. And I feel like they're at their best when they are out to shock the world, right? You think about that 2022 season, the end of it with the Tennessee win, the Clemson win. Nobody thought they were going to be able to do that. Obviously, some things happened with Tennessee. Hendon Hooker goes down, but he scored 60-something points. You ran out of fireworks. Can't say it enough. So when the expectations are low for South Carolina, I feel like that's when they are at their best. They sneak up on people. They are constantly disrespected. The logo on the helmet is constantly disrespected for whatever reason. It happens all the time. I mean, remember, think about that Oklahoma game. We've seen Oklahoma all year. It's been a large sample size. It's not like Kentucky when you went to Kentucky in week 2 and we didn't know what Kentucky was going to be yet. Like, we've seen Oklahoma all year. And they were still a 4-point favorite when that line opened. And Vegas finally caught up to everybody. And I think it swung to South Carolina by 2.5 by game time. But that's the constant disrespect. And you guys know it. You guys are used to it. We talk about it all the time in the comments. So going into this game, that's kind of what I was hoping for. You've had a couple of, people give you some bulletin board material. The person from Barstool, Kirk Herbstreit, was praising Marcel Reed. I didn't think it was anything bad about Carolina necessarily, but you've had some things to get you motivated and fired up and give a little extra juice for the game. But this is starting to become a very, very popular upset pick, which makes me nervous. And it doesn't mean they can't do it by any means, but it just makes me nervous. So the things to avoid and the matchups that are going to be key for this game, a lot of it's the same thing that South Carolina does all the time when they win, and the things that creep up and rear their ugly head when they lose. So, and you guys already know what it is. It's winning the turnover battle. It's not, having key moments where you have a chance to put somebody away or pull ahead or whatever, or stop the bleeding and make sure you're not making a self-inflicted, mistake deep in your own territory. All that kind of stuff. The things that you have to do for this week, you got to learn a lesson. Number 1, that's the first key matchup. You have to learn a lesson. Shane Beamer and his staff and everybody in that locker room has to learn a lesson from what happened before the Ole Miss game. It's a little bit different because you had Ole Miss coming in off a loss, but you had Ole Miss coming in. You were fired up because Juice Wells was there. It was a 3:30 game in Williams-Brice. You were coming off a bye week. You had a lot of extra juice for that game. And what ended up happening was you were never in it. You took yourself out of it right away. You have got to figure out a way that this time, off the bye, Shane Beamer, the staff, they are like especially on the opening drive, especially when you're on script, that first 15 plays on both sides. Because listen, here's the thing: A&M, as great as everyone wants to talk about how great they are right now because they beat LSU. Let's bring them back down to earth for a second. I think what they've done has been very impressive, especially in year one with Mike Elko, especially when they've been spinning their wheels for the last several years, and all the preseason hype and never living up to expectations with Jimbo Fisher. It's awesome what Mike Elko's done in year one. It really is. That being said, the win against LSU was great. Come from behind win, but you were gift wrapped 3 turnovers. One of them was inside LSU's 8-yard line. Now you still have to go put them away and finish drives and score. And it's, tip your cap because they scored 5 straight times in the second half when Marcel Reed came in, and that's great. But this is a game, plain and simple. You cannot make those mistakes. Nussmeier is a bit of a gunslinger. You guys remember, when he played here in September, a couple of throws like that just were, what are you thinking? Sellers has been turning a corner at quarterback. He cannot afford to put you in situations where you regress and take a step back, because this is a very, very good front seven. It's a really good, honestly, it's just a really, really good defense. And the thing about Mike Elko is he's very, very good at scheming guys to come through different gaps. It's not like exotic blitzes, but he does a really, really good job of making you play left-handed. And, on defense, like, they can be suffocating. They've got a very, very physical front four. It's not like you have some, like, you don't have a Jadeveon Clowney off the edge. You don't have like a, even like a Dylan Stewart or a Kyle, a Kennard like off the edge. You don't have like a, like a freak athlete coming off the edge that is 260, 270 and lanky and long and has bend and all that kind of stuff, like a combine warrior. You have Nick Scorton, who is a massive, massive human being. Shamar Turner, massive, massive human being. The offensive line for Carolina is going to have their work cut out for them. Now, on the other end, I don't think that might be the first time all year. I don't think that the edge rushers for Carolina are going to be the most important part of the defense. Really, I don't even think the secondary is either. For the first time all season, like, the most important thing the secondary is going to have to do is come up and play in the box. A&M makes no bones about what their identity is as an offense. They run the ball 63.7% of the time. 63.7. It's like 524 total plays this year, 334 rushes. They do not throw the ball. Mainly because Connor Wegman doesn't throw it very well, to be honest. Again, Carolina's going to have their work cut out for them up front and in the trenches, but this is a Tonka Hemingway game. This is how do we stuff the middle with Huntley and everybody in the middle, those big uglies in the very, very center from guard to guard and the interior O-line versus the interior D-line. That is going to be the key, because A&M is going to line up and run the football at you, just flat out. There was a drive that they had, I think it's when they kind of like realized who they were as a team and as an offense against Florida this year. Game was like 13-0. It was kind of close, but like Florida, of course, is being Florida, making a bunch of mistakes and all that kind of stuff. Early game in the season, they pin A&M deep with like 2 minutes left or 2.5 minutes left, something like that. It was late in the first half. They pin them deep. A&M goes on like a 14 or 16 play drive. They ran the ball on every single play except for one. Touchdown, go up 20-0 right before the half, and put them away. They are going to try to line up and run the ball down your throat. This is not the unit to do that to. This is a great ball hawking secondary from South Carolina. They are a really, really opportunistic defense in terms of like forcing turnovers. We all know that. You're going to have to line up and play in a phone booth for 60 minutes on Saturday. And it's not like they won't take their shots. Like you saw it against LSU. Like Marcel Reed was 2 of 2 for 70 yards. But especially if he's the quarterback, they are not going to throw the ball deep, and especially against this defense. LSU can get away with it. LSU's defense is not what South Carolina's is. So you're going to have to play. I mean, it's not anything close to South Carolina not being capable of playing that style of football, right? Styles make fights, right? They're more than capable of doing it. We just haven't seen them have to do it, I think, since really the Kentucky game. So, like teams that drop back and throw it 30, 40 times a game, that's a dream for Clayton White and this defense. This is not that. So that is the first part of the show, and we are going to get into some more key matchups, get into the deep dive that was requested, and look at some of the numbers, and then also look at some of the things that A&M does well, and also some things they don't do very well, to be honest, that I think you can take advantage of. But it is a very, very good opponent that's coming in. I think they're getting patted on the back a little bit too much, but we will get to all of that and more moving forward with the rest of the show. Before we do, I want to talk to you again about our friends at Game Time. Man, listen, it feels like everybody's going to this game this weekend. Like they are. I mean, I was talking to Brad Crawford about it the other day, and he was even saying like I'm pretty sure the hotel prices are even more asinine than they usually are. I don't know what the get-in price is yet, but if you are trying to get into Williams-Brice on Saturday night, make sure you are using our friends at the Game Time app and going to them for your one-stop ticket purchasing needs. It's the greatest ticket purchasing app like I've ever come across. I feel like I say it every time, and I genuinely mean it. They do such a great job of having the customer service side of ticket buying, which you never see. Like you just, for whatever reason, like you never see that with anyone else. Game Time does it better than any other team in the industry. They just do more things for the actual like fan because they're fans and they want you to make sure you get in to the game, to the concert, to the comedy show, whatever your tickets or event is that you're going to see. Make sure you're using Game Time app before you do it. Download the Game Time app, use a promo code Locked On College. That's Locked On College. You get $20 off your first purchase. But again, take the guesswork out of buying tickets. They have a tremendous like line of assets that you can use. You can toggle the feature over to have your all-in pricing up front so you can see exactly what the total is going to be before there's any kind of hidden fees or anything. No surprises at checkout. Everything is up front. Speaking of, you also get to see a full panoramic view of your seat from and the stadium from your seat before you actually hit purchase. That is a feature that is really cool as well. And then more than anything, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. I mean, they are unbelievable at making sure you are catered to and everything is taken care of for you. So all you have to do is show up, show your tickets, and go in and have a fantastic time, which we're all going to do on Saturday night in Williams-Brice. So before you get into Willie B, make sure you're going over to our friends at the Game Time app, use the promo code Locked On College, $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply, but sign up today. What time is it? It's game time. All right. When we come back, we will continue to break down A&M and talk about the key matchups, as well as answer some of y'all's questions that you submitted on Twitter and Instagram. All right, we're back. Okay. So A&M, here's my main takeaway on A&M. You have to give them credit for what they've done in year one. I think they're 7-1. They are in the driver's seat to get to Atlanta. They do not have a conference loss. They're 5-0 in the conference. They beat LSU. They beat who else did they beat? They beat Missouri like a drum, which honestly is not that impressive, to be honest. Beat Mississippi State on the road, beat Arkansas. But here's the thing. We tend to be a prisoner of the moment with certain things in college football, whether it's good or bad. Like overreacting is just now the new reacting. And you see it all the time on social media, especially. That was a huge win on Saturday night. And you also had the eyes of the entire country watching you. They really haven't been in that many situations like that at A&M this season. Notre Dame, they were, and they got beat. Now, one of the main things about A&M from an offensive standpoint especially is whoever the starter is at quarterback, there's a much higher ceiling with one quarterback than the other. It seems pretty obvious to me that Marcel Reed should be the guy, Not even just because of what happened on Saturday, but you're talking about a kid that even when he was replacing Connor Wegman, when he was injured, he has not thrown an interception all season. He's like 11 total touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That's really difficult to do. When Wegman came back against Mizzou, I was kind of shocked, and he played great, but he also didn't reach the end zone once. I think he has more interceptions in league play than he does touchdowns for sure. And against LSU, he struggled against Mississippi State as well. So you talk about going into this game. I think that A&M is a product of they lose that first game, then they play McNeese State, they play Florida, and they play some other nobody. Let's not forget that in that second game, or like the third or fourth game of the season, they played Bowling Green and won by 6, right? Like they lose to Notre Dame at home. They kill McNeese 52-10. They go on the road against Florida. They win by 13. They beat Bowling Green by 6. They beat Arkansas by 4. They boat race Missouri. They go on the road against Mississippi State, struggle for a lot of that game. It was only a 10-point game late there. And it's a true freshman quarterback, by the way, for a 1-7 Mississippi State team. Then they come back and they come from behind and beat LSU. Again, great win, but you were gift wrapped 3 turnovers. I think they were all inside of their own, like they were all on LSU side of the field too. Now that's concerning because it's not like Lenore Sellers hasn't been prone to do that at times this year. But if you can avoid that and avoid gift wrapping them, free points, as with any game, that's a good start in terms of finding a recipe for winning. Now, the other part of it is this. I think the key to beating A&M is obviously stopping the run. You want to make them throw the ball. Good things happen to South Carolina when opponents try to throw the ball all over them. You saw it against Alabama. Saw it multiple times against LSU, even though the refs stepped in. But like good things happen. You saw it against Oklahoma, Kentucky. Again, good things happen for South Carolina when opponents try to throw the ball all over the field on them. A&M is not going to at least start the game with that. You need to see if you can make them finish the game with that. If they are in a come from behind situation where they cannot run their offense, which is just, a glorified 3 yards in a cloud of dust type deal, you need to make sure you can try to get out ahead. And that's, again, the importance of being on script, the importance of winning turnover battle, all that kind of stuff. The other part of it is this. So they lead the SEC in turnover margin. They don't make, like they do have a lot of penalties per game, but they don't make a lot of self-inflicted errors, right? First in the SEC in turnover margin, first in the SEC in red zone offense, and 4th overall in the country. When they get into the end zone, or when they get into the red zone, they score just flat out. That being said, they also are 15th in the SEC in red zone defense and allowing opponents to score. They rank 112th or worse in the country in passing yards, passing completions, passing attempts, and completion percentage. Like I said, they run the ball 63.7% of the plays, and they are second to last in the SEC in 30-yard pass plays or more. Stack the box and try to make them play left-handed. Make them uncomfortable early, because especially if Marcel Reed is a quarterback, you have a young kid in a road environment. It's tough to win on the road, guys. It's like a lot of this with A&M. The LSU game is a great win, but again, I don't know how much worse LSU could have played, right? Like if you watch that game versus the game you watched for South Carolina, who do you think played them better? I mean, I would argue South Carolina. So if you can figure out a way to stack the box, like you got to play them in a phone booth, and they have a really, really good offensive line. They've allowed, I think, like the second or third fewest tackles for loss in the SEC this year. A lot of the things that Carolina has been doing well all season, A&M has also done well on the opposite side of the football. So, again, they are not going to make any bones about what they're going to do when they come out and play. And that kind of sucks, because you want to see a game where like Nick Eamon-Warry can make a difference and like be a ball hawk and all that kind of stuff. They're just going to come down and play in the box, just flat out. They have a very, very, very disciplined and sound defense under Clayton White. Forced fumbles, right? Like no one does that better in the SEC than South Carolina. No one. think they've like forced like 16 or something like that this year. It's crazy. So you have got to figure out a way to do that. Offensively, and I've been dragging my feet trying to even get into this, you're going to have to figure out a way to run the ball. You're just going to have to. But that is going to be tough sledding. Now, listen, LSU's rushing offense is awful. I think they ran for 24 total yards. They had in the second half, they had 12 carries for 0 yards against A&M. A&M's defense is stout against the run. And also they're good in the back end too, in the secondary, right? So they are a good defense. They don't do a ton that blows you away. Like they don't have a bunch of sacks on the season. I think, they're top 10 in the country in completion percentage allowed, top 25 in QB rating, fourth in fumbles recovered. But outside of that, there's not a ton that they do statistically that jumps out to you. They got some good athletes back there, but you have to figure out a way to get Lenore Sellers going through the air, whether it's, keeping this like the linebackers like dunking something over like their heads, like you kind of did a couple times against Bama, scheming somebody open on like the wheel concept routes and slot fades that you did against them and Oklahoma, something. But you are not going to be able to run the football between the tackles at will against this team. You definitely want to get Rocket Sanders going. But I think this is a game where you have got to figure out a way to be creative and get Sellers and Sanders going to keep them on their toes, get the tight ends involved, all that kind of stuff. You're going to have to take some shots. You're going to have to take some shots just to make sure that defense is not crowding the box all night long, because they're going to try to make Lenore Sellers force him into a mistake. I mean, why wouldn't you, right? I think that as the game plays on, it would be very, very imperative for South Carolina to have a lead early. Coming from behind against this team is not an ideal situation, because they are going to run the football, keep your offense on the sidelines, and make sure that you do not have a way to get back in a game. Bottom line, they built a lead early against Mississippi State, put them away. Like Mizzou, obviously that was a bloodbath, but there's a path to winning here. You get Jared Brown back at receiver, which is great. You should get healthier. That offensive line is going to have to figure out a way to keep Lenore Sellers upright more than they have this year. The offensive line has been a problem. We all know it has. This is not a great team to be going up against when you've had those kind of issues. I think that when they come out, they need to come out with the same type of style, and same type of game plan they had against Alabama. I think Bama came into that game thinking Carolina was going to try to, bang their head against the wall and run the football over and over and over again. Like that's what Vandy had done to them, I think, like the week before. They came out, they threw, I think, on the first 2 plays of the game, which I don't even think I've seen that all season. Sellers was like 6 of 7 on the first 2 series combined. Like that is the path to winning. You need to be balanced, obviously more balanced than LSU, but you're going to have to have a similar game that Lenore Sellers has had the past 2 weeks, where he's completing over 67% of his passes. He's not turning the football over, and you're able to move the chains. So that needs to be the game plan. It sounds simple, but you have the athletes to go out here and win this game. You do. Like one of the things that people didn't talk about that LSU game is the amount of drop passes from Kyron Lacey and a couple of those other guys, Mason Taylor. A lot of self-inflicted wounds where the moment was a little bit too big, because also they were in front of 107,000 people in Kyle Field. You get this game at home. You have all of that in your favor, which is huge. So how do you take advantage of that? And also, here's the other thing too. Like A&M has some good players defensively, especially in the secondary, but they're young back there. Des Ricks played really well against LSU. It's a true freshman. Former 5-star, sure, but it's a true freshman. So I think you got to figure out a way to be a little bit more balanced. If you're Carolina's offense, you cannot go like remember this stat I pulled up from the offense. You're 7th in the country in rush attempts per game. You're 103rd in rush yards per carry. You can't have that. You just can't. So defensively, obviously, I think that's where your strength is with South Carolina for sure. You rank 133rd in the country in sacks allowed. You're 132nd in fumbles. You cannot turn the football over. Just bottom line, you're about the same and even with penalties, and that's whatever. But the big thing here, you've got to learn a lesson from the Ole Miss game. And this is a team. Listen, I know it's a new coach and they're excited and all that kind of stuff, but this is not the same environment they've been in all year. This is like they played in the swamp and they played a neutral site game against Arkansas, and they played at Mississippi State. Mississippi State's garbage. They're 1-7. You got Florida early when they didn't know what they were doing at quarterback. I don't know if they do now. Mertz just got injured. But this is a much different situation that they have been in than what they have been in all year. And I told you this before the season started. This is an A&M team that was 2-9 in their last 11 road trips going into this season. I'm happy y'all beat LSU. That's great. That's great. This is a much, much different environment and a much different setting. So, all right, we will get into the deep dive next. I appreciate you guys joining and sticking around for it. Also, we're like a week away from tip-off for men's and women's hoops. I saw the odds that came out from, I forgot who it was, but it was either like Bet Online or one of those sports books. The odds when the SEC, South Carolina's numbers were unbelievably low, just like they were last year. And they ended up going 13-5 in the conference and finishing, what was it, third or fifth? One of the, like, they were top 5 in the conference. I feel like they finished third. Anyway, so not too concerned about that. I also did see that there was some publication that is like a pretty well-respected college basketball account, and they did tiers for the SEC. And the tier that Carolina was in was the second from the bottom. It was just mid. It was them and Mizzou. Mizzou didn't win a single conference game at all last year. So I guess it just will never not blow my mind the amount of dismissive and disrespect and the attitude people have towards South Carolina in all sports, apparently, not just football. But we will have that season starting very, very soon. We will have some really big games to close out the year, man. Some really, really good big games to close out the year. All right, when we come back, we are going to talk about this deep dive and talk about just how good the numbers have been defensively for South Carolina, especially heading into this weekend's game against a freshman quarterback, Marcel Reed. Locked on Gamecocks continues next. All right, so a while back, we did a offensive deep dive when I was frustrated is a word. It was probably a little bit more exaggerated than that with Dowell Loggins and the offense after the Ole Miss game. Several of you reached out, asked for a defensive deep dive as well. So we have that here, and we're going to go over the numbers and talk about just how good this defense has been this year, really the past several years, but this year especially. All right, so I did 32 total stats. I think I did 30 last time for offense, but you did 32 total stats. They ranked in the top 30 nationally in 20 of those 32. They ranked in the top 20 nationally in 14 of the 32. That's really, really good, guys. That is, really, really good. 7 of 16. That is talking about almost half of the stats you rank in the top 20 nationally in those. You're top 5 in the SEC in 18 of the 32, and then you're also top half of the SEC 8 or better in 26 of them as well. All right, so here are where your strengths are. Some of these are kind of skewed because the defenses in the SEC this year have just been really, really good across the board. Points per game, you're 8th in the SEC, you're 22nd nationally, 18.7 points per game, not bad. You're giving up less than 300 yards per game, that's 4th in the SEC, 13th best in the country. Yards per play, this is way more important than yards per game allowed. 4.4 yards per play allowed. That is 4th best in the SEC. That is 6th best in the country. That is elite. That is just flat out elite. Total plays, you are 22nd in the country. 20-plus yard plays, again, 22nd. You've given up 25 total plays all season through 7 games that went over for 20 yards or more. It's 4th best in the league. Let's see here. First downs allowed, you have given up 121. That's the 11th best in the country, which is insane. Turnover margin, +4. That's 4th in the SEC, 32nd in the country. Total turnovers. This is, again, I marvel at this every single time. 16 total turnovers forced this year. That is third best in the SEC and 13th best in the country. Just a tremendous job from Clayton White and staff. Interceptions, 10 total on the year, fourth in the SEC and 12th in the country. How about this? How about you've given up 10 passing touchdowns? I'm sorry, you've had 10 interceptions on the year. You've only allowed 6 passing touchdowns. You're +4 in just passing TDs versus INTs. Rush defense, you are 16th in the country, 3rd in the SEC. Here's kind of the bread and butter here, right? We talked about the total turnovers forced, the total interceptions in the season. Those are all top 15. Sacks, you have 28 on the year, which is 2nd in the SEC, 3rd in the country. Tackles for loss, 57 total, 4th in the SEC, 12th in the country. Total pressures, 132. I was kind of surprised by that. That's 6th best in the SEC, but that is still top 20 nationally. And then you start talking about like the yards per carry. This is the stat that I've circled and put 1,000 stars next to. Yards per carry allowed. How many yards per rush attempt that the South Carolina's defense is allowing? 2.82. That's 4th best in the SEC, 7th best in the country. That is where you have to live on Saturday. 3rd best completion percentage defense in the SEC. You're only allowing 6.3 yards per attempt through the air, which is insane. Let's see here. You've only allowed 6 passing touchdowns, like I told you. That is 3rd in the SEC, the top 10 nationally. Now, 3rd down defense and red zone defense, that's where you can get a little bit better. You are 9th in the SEC in both those things and 41st in the country. Long pass plays haven't been great there. 20-yard pass plays, you're 34th. 30-yard pass plays, you're 72nd. But this team's not going to do that to you, so you don't have to really worry too much about that this weekend. Here's the one that was very surprising to me. First quarter defense and first half points per game allowed. They're allowing 4 points per game in the first quarter, which is 8th best in the SEC. First half, they're allowing 11 points per game, and that is ranked 41st. But here's the other thing too about that, guys. You're also talking about playing Ole Miss, who has one of the best first half offenses in the country. Alabama, same way, and LSU. And if you look at those games outside of the Ole Miss game, you were down 2 at the half against Alabama, and you were up, I think, 10 or I'm trying to think what the score was at halftime for the LSU Carolina game. I feel like they were up by 14 or something. It was like 24-10, 24-17. I don't know. Either way. So a little bit surprising there. But here's the thing. Putting the clamps down in the second half, you're allowing just over 1 touchdown per game in the second half of games this year. 7.7 points allowed in the final 30 minutes. That is 3rd best in the SEC and 12th best in the country. So what does all that mean? The keys to winning this weekend from the numbers that I just gave you, and I'm sorry for giving you all the numbers in just reading form. Probably not the best talk radio or podcast content you can have. But you ask, I deliver. That's what we do. The main takeaways from that, outside of the fact that this is not a good defense, this is an elite defense. If you're worried about the fact that maybe they're just flashy because they're good off the edge and they get to the quarterback and you're not going to have as many opportunities to do that this week, don't be. Because your run defense, especially in the interior, has been elite all season. Elite all season. So figure out a way to make sure you limit A&M and keep them in 3rd and longs where they are not in 3rd and short situations and they can run for a first down. That's one. The other thing is this. Keep them out of the red zone. You cannot have a bend but don't break defense this weekend against this team, because when they get inside the 20, they are deadly. They are one of the best teams in the country. I think they're 4th best overall. You cannot have a ton of success if you allow them to have a short field or give them consistent access inside your 20-yard line. Now, listen, Carolina's been one of the best defenses in the country, like red zone defense over the past several years. I think last year, I brought the stat up before. I think they had 12 or 17 total turnovers last year that were just in the red zone, which is insane. It was 2nd best in the SEC. But you do not want to live there. You want to make Randy Bond, that kicker, have several attempts from long range. He was not great last week. Let's keep it that way. And last but not least, guys, it's turnovers. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Shane Beamer and company, they're 20-6 when they win the turnover battle. They're 3-15 when they don't. This is a team that doesn't have a ton of turnovers. They don't have a ton of turnovers. That being said, let's see here. Yeah, they have the second fewest in the SEC. They have 6 all season. 6. They do not turn the football over a bunch. So you cannot have a blindside strip sack. You cannot have a fumble, a botched snap, any of that kind of stuff. Elite focus, elite preparation, all that kind of stuff. Go out there and let it rip. So there you go. That is Wednesday's show. Went a little bit long, but you guys know I love the numbers and breaking those down. I hope all of you have a great rest of your day. When you're done listening to this, make sure you are checking out the other Locked On content that we have, including Locked On SEC with our buddy Chris Gordy, who does a great job breaking down all things SEC. We do a weekly show together every Thursday or Friday. That'll be out later this week. We recorded it, I believe it was yesterday. And we also have a squad show where we have the hosts of all the different SEC Locked Ons. We have a weekly show with them that'll be out Thursday as well. So make sure you check both those out. I appreciate y'all. We'll be back tomorrow. Send in questions, send in predictions, all that stuff, and we will get to game day very, very soon. So go Cox. See y'all then.